So Nintendo just recently wrapped up their most recent quarterly financial briefing, and wouldn't you know it, each time this happens, not only do we get a ton of new data when it comes to the Nintendo Switch and how specific games are performing on the platform, but we oftentimes also see specific questions asked around new console hardware and where Nintendo is at in the current life cycle of the Switch today. How is it continuing to perform compared to existing forecasts and expectations? And you've probably seen a ton of headlines flying around online recently suggesting that for sure, 100% certain, no new hardware is coming until spring 2024 at the soonest, and Furukawa said it himself. And there is actually quite a bit of nuance to this conversation, and in today's video, we need to break down exactly what was said from Furukawa and what was reported from a very reputable source that may indeed be correct in its statement. But I want to break everything down with you all and get on the same page on what, if anything, this means when it comes to the broader picture of what to expect when it comes to the rest of the software lineup on the current Nintendo Switch, and what this could really signify when you talk about the reveal timeline and launch window of new next generation Nintendo Switch hardware in the future. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, today we have to talk about the most recent quarterly financial briefing directly from Nintendo, where they answer all types of questions around the Nintendo Switch, how it's performing compared to their existing forecasts, and where they expect it to head from here. And to first briefly highlight a couple interesting slides as far as where the Switch is at today and some notable software that's selling along with it, you do have the Nintendo Switch at 125.26 million units sold right now in the hands of consumers, which is obviously a massive number when you talk about total hardware units for Nintendo. When it comes to home consoles, it's the best performing console ever, and when it comes to handheld consoles, it's still at the very top of that list. And depending on how Nintendo handles the true next-gen successor with branding and things, we may or may not see it topple off the DS when it's all said and done and become the best-selling console of all time, or if they break it up and it's a true separate distinction, it may not ever reach those numbers. But regardless, it's been one heck of a ride for Nintendo so far. In addition, they highlighted some software that hit some pretty outstanding numbers in fiscal year 2023, where you can see Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sitting at 20.7 million total units sold, Splatoon 3 crossing 10.2 million, Nintendo Switch Sports 9 million, Mario Strikers Battle League 2 million, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 1.6 million, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the game that won't die or ever go away, 8.1 million, Kirby's Forgotten Land 3.8 million, Animal Crossing trucking along at 3.6 million, Mario Party Superstars 3.3, and Smash Bros coming in at 2.9. Very quick honorable mention too, Metroid Prime is past 1 million units sold, and it's tracking very similar to the sales of Dread, so it could very easily become the best-selling Metroid game of all time so far. And if it doesn't take that title, it certainly is close, and you love to see that as a Metroid fan, because if we see similar momentum for Echoes and Prime 3 Corruption, providing that they ultimately get released on the platform, that spells great things for Prime 4's release and the larger future plans for Metroid games going forward, which of course I always love to see. Now, where things really got interesting within this investor briefing though, while those are some great numbers to celebrate and Nintendo's still making revenue hand over fist, don't get me wrong, there is definitely a stark decline compared to fiscal years in the past. And of course, if you are a for-profit business, that is never the goal. You always want to see a gradual increase, and with console life cycles, you expect a decrease at some point, but you don't want to let that decrease slip to a level that is quote-unquote unacceptable, or what could signal to investors that you're losing momentum or don't know what to do next in order to capitalize on momentum that Nintendo has clearly had and still has, to be fair, up to this point in time. And to first get on the same page with exactly what's being said here, because there is a lot of misinterpretation. You probably saw following these investor results a lot of different outlets reporting that Furukawa himself actually went on record saying that there's no new Switch until spring 2024 at the soonest. That's not what was actually said. There is some interesting decline in sales data in terms of their forecast, but there was a separate report from Nikkei that we will read through the details of as well that is actually the source that's claiming that for sure there's no Switch coming out in the current fiscal year, which would essentially mean we would have nothing on the radar until March or really April 2024 at the soonest, because that is whenever the fiscal year of 2023 will indeed wrap up. Now with that, let's quickly hop over to VGC and read through their detailed typed up article together. Nintendo reports Switch sales slowdown and suggests no new hardware this year. Console sales declined by 22% in the year ended March 31st. Company forecasts further 16.5% decline this year. The company has now sold 125.62 million Switch consoles as of March 31st, up from 122.5 million, but year-end console sales have declined by 22%. In its results for the end of the fiscal year, Nintendo confirmed it had sold a total of 17.97 million consoles during the 12-month period, which means it missed its year start sales target of 21 million and the later revised target of 18 million. The company forecasts it will sell 15 million consoles during the current fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, which represents a further 16.5% decline as Switch enters a significant slowdown during its 7th year on the market. Nintendo Switch has entered its 7th year since launch, and while it will become more challenging to maintain the same sales momentum as before, our goal is to have more consumers continue to play Nintendo Switch for longer, leading to maximize sales, the company said in a statement. Speaking on a call after the results, President Shintaro Furukawa reportedly suggested that amid slowing console sales, Nintendo isn't completely confident in hitting its next 15 million target. According to Bloomberg, and this is important, Furukawa added that no new or upgraded hardware is factored into Nintendo's annual forecast. Now, so that's the big line that I think was heavily misinterpreted online, because I saw numerous different articles, even YouTube videos popping up saying that Furukawa himself said no new Switch until 2024. And the reality is that he said his fiscal year forecast does not factor in new Nintendo Switch hardware or new hardware, quote unquote, which would mean that that 15 million target that he's talking about is actually what doesn't factor in new hardware into the conversation. He is referencing only the current family of Switch consoles that is being sold today, and if Nintendo did choose to release a console, they wouldn't be lying to investors. They would just simply not be including it in the 15 million forecasted units that they're talking about to investors, which, to be fair, they're also stating may be very hard to do. Now, the report that got conflated with is actually a very interesting one, because it comes from Nikkei, who is historically very reliable when it comes to Nintendo reports, and they had the following to say: development of Nintendo's next console is reportedly progressing well, but a launch isn't planned before spring 2024, a Nikkei source has claimed. That's according to a Nikkei Asia source, who the publication claims is close to the platform holder. Development seems to be progressing well, they said, but a product launch won't happen before next spring at the earliest. Now, what is funny about this whole story to me is that I'm actually not of the mindset that we will see new next-gen Nintendo Switch hardware, the Switch 2, whatever it might be called, actually launch this year. I think it is more likely that that early 2024 time window makes the most sense. I think that spring, March, April, or May timeline, or maybe even holiday 2024 may be what Nintendo is planning here. But Nintendo is Nintendo at the end of the day, and what is being reported is not coming straight from Nintendo as far as them ruling out the possibility of putting out some new Switch this holiday season in 2023. We know their games lineup is looking very interesting compared to years past. We know that as the Switch is in its 7th year of sales now, it is starkly declining, and they will need to do something at some point in time. If anybody out there still thinks that Nintendo might last 10 years with the current Switch as its only console that it's selling, I think you can clearly see the writing on the wall that that won't be the case. Will the Switch ultimately have a 10-year life cycle like Nintendo suggested in investor meetings in the past? Yes, it will, because it will be sold likely at a lower price alongside of new next-gen hardware in its 8th year of sales, and will continue to be sold for a few more years alongside of the next-gen hardware. I think that is the logical progression here, and while I would love to have new hardware out this holiday season, and I would pick it up even after buying the Nintendo Switch OLED Tears of the Kingdom edition, I still think that it's something that is likely reserved for 2024, and I do tend to believe that Nikkei report that new hardware is in manufacturing somewhere. It's being developed. It's progressing nicely, but it's likely not out this year. And 2024 could indeed be the year that we finally get all of the information and get that console truly in our hands. And where I do think it's interesting to spend just a little bit of time at the end of this conversation is that it would potentially make a lot of sense for Nintendo to reveal the console very late 2023 if they do indeed plan on targeting that spring window 2024, essentially doing a rinse and repeat of the strategy that they did with the Nintendo Switch launch. Would it shoot themselves in the foot around the holiday season with the Switch sales announcing a new console? Yes, slightly it would, but the Nintendo Switch has also arguably hit a point of market saturation, and if you wanted to do some kind of price cut for the Switch for the first time ever in Black Friday season, this holiday season, this year, I do think it makes sense to maybe do that for the first time in light of the announcement that you have new hardware coming the beginning of next year. None of that's confirmed, but I could definitely see Nintendo pulling some strings to maybe slash the price at this current Switch at some point, either before the release of the next console or right around the time window that it will ultimately launch. But that's all the information. Furukawa didn't say there's no chance of it. It's just not factored into those forecasted numbers that they gave us in terms of new console hardware this year. That said, I still think that early 2024 is the time spot that we see it ultimately released. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, all your personal thoughts and opinions on everything we talked about today. How do you feel about Furukawa and his statements around it not being factored in to the forecast this year? Do you think that that was more him hinting that indeed there is no new hardware on the table for 2023, or do you think that they actually do have something up their sleeves for the holiday season this year, and that's when we'll be playing on new next generation Nintendo hardware? Also, how do you feel about the software that was mentioned and its continued momentum and the attach rate to the Nintendo Switch? What do you think about where the Switch is at today and its decline year over year in terms of its sales trajectory? And do you think Nintendo is actually waiting too long to reveal what is next? Should they have already pulled back the curtain on a true next-gen Switch, or are they navigating the situation correctly? So regardless of all your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.